On the first day of the transfer portal, Nebraska loses their punter. What happens next?
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where right now new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet, and it wins.
All right, got to win that bet.
Yeah.
Welcome in. I am Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. You have found the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Thank you. It is Thursday. We are one day into the spring portal season in college football, and look what happened. Nebraska needs a punter, Connor.
Yes, Nebraska needs a punter, but they just got a punter, Mitch, out of the transfer portal in the last transfer portal cycle. What could have possibly happened?
We talked about how this might happen and how there was probably going to be a surprise and how it would be a surprise if there weren't surprises in the portal season this year. And here we are on day one, night one. I was out in Papillion coaching some baseball and got back into my car around 8 o'clock. And there it was, the news that Jack McCallister had entered the portal. So he's the punter who transferred to Nebraska from Washington in December. He said in his parting post on Twitter Wednesday that circumstances have changed. So what circumstances are those? Well, Mike Ekeler is here now.
Regular circumstances, which I thought was great. Like when you hear circumstances from a player entering the transfer portal, your brain immediately goes to like, well, somebody didn't fulfill an NIL, deal or something like that. It's not that. It's not. It's barely even nefarious.
Right. Initially, I was like, "Well, did something happen? Like in his family situation? Does he need to be? Closer to home? I don't know." But you start to investigate this and look into it a bit, and you will find that Mike Ekeler, who is the special teams coordinator now at Nebraska, with Tennessee for the last 2 seasons, he used a rugby punting style system. And if you want to put the pieces together, now we'll hear from Matt Rhule today, and I think Rhule can go into some more depth on this. And it's not like anyone has come out and said, yes, absolutely, Nebraska's planning to go with the rugby style system. But that appears to be what is at the center of this. While Ekeler was doing that and employing that style at Tennessee, he talked about it a lot and how much he liked the system and how much it allowed Tennessee to be able to have an excellent punting setup. His punter at Tennessee, Jackson Ross, averaged 43.9 yards per punt last year as a rugby-style punter and got 40% of his kicks down inside the opponent 20-yard line. This system allows the coverage while the punter rolls out to get downfield and presumably cover punts with more effectiveness than what we've seen at Nebraska in recent years. Huskers have struggled in net punting. Yeah.
Yes. In theory, that works. You kind of feel bad for Jack because, reading a little bit on his situation, he left Washington in part because they were moving to a rugby style a little bit. And he came to Nebraska and signed up with Ed Foley, and that Ed Foley is sort of removed from that specific picture. And then Mike Ekeler comes in, and I'm sure it's been made clear to him for multiple weeks now, if not months, that they want to do this. But obviously, in the first day that the portal opens up, that's when you can go. And so he made his intentions clear, and it doesn't seem like there's no ill will or anything like that. It sounds like he's gonna finish out the rest of spring ball and be around the team and stuff like that. But he's got a style of punting that he wants to, that he's been doing his entire life and he is good at, and it doesn't fit what Nebraska wants to do right now. I like the fact that Nebraska is really particular and specific about where they want to go with this. Now the question is, can you find someone in the short period of time? Because the other punter that is left on Nebraska's roster is Camden Cook. And I don't believe he is a rugby punter either. At the same time, Mitch, like, can you be a rugby punter if you're not a rugby punter? Like, I don't know. Maybe that's something that you could do, but it feels like Nebraska is going to be active in the transfer portal here.
I'm sure there's an example out there of a punter who taught himself or learned the ways of rugby punting. I mean, they all did at some point, but most of them either played rugby or Australian rules football or something like this. And that's the case with Jackson Ross, the guy who did it for Ekeler the last couple of years at Tennessee. He's an Australian, was actually good friends and Aussie and his schoolmate with in Melbourne with the Iowa punting legend Tory Taylor.
Oh yeah,
is now the Chicago Bears punter.
That's what I love to hear.
So this is going to be a little tricky because Nebraska's got to implement this outside of the spring practice season. There's not a rugby style punter. If in fact this is what Nebraska's doing, like let's not get too far ahead of this and hear from Matt Rhule about it today on Thursday. But either way, Nebraska's probably going to have to go get someone in the portal. You're not going to go into the season with one punter in Camden Cook. They're going to have to go in the portal, find a punter, or sign a recruit maybe from Australia. I would say it's very presumptuous to suggest that might be Jackson Ross, the punter for the past 2 seasons at Tennessee. He's at Tennessee, not like Tennessee Tech. So I don't even think that Mike Ekeler would want to try to do that to Josh Heupel, take his punter in late April or May. So Jackson Ross is good at it and probably staying with the Vols. So if you're Nebraska, identify a punter. Maybe they've already identified one. Get him here. Teach Nebraska's coverage team how to play that style. Maybe they've already been working on it.
I think so. That'd be my guess.
Yeah. If Ekeler knew this is what he wanted to do, then he's probably been teaching those guys on the punt coverage team to get down the field. And I guess it's just you run down the field as you would normally run down the field, but the punter is taking more time back there behind the line of scrimmage. It's definitely doable.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a little more nuance to it. I don't know what that is, but like,
I don't know. Just run down the field.
Just run down the field. And good news, you're going to run down the field even with a head start this time after. Anyway, so to your point, I think that's the important point to take away from this. I'm not particularly, maybe you are, I'm not worried about the punter, and who the punter is going to be. Like, I think Nebraska's going to be able to find somebody who can punt for them. There's a bunch of people who can punt, whether they're from Australia or from Nebraska. Like, somebody will sign up for, I'm going to be the punter at Nebraska, even if it's, somebody's going to sign up for that.
You want to go make like 6 figures and punt at Nebraska and like eat at that training table and I mean, their guys are going to line up. Right.
It's the other stuff. It's the, how do you implement it from a team perspective on special teams? And like you said, there's little to no doubt for me that they've already been doing a lot of this in spring ball and preparing for it. So I think that there's that piece of it. It's just, are you going to be able to nail that down? How big of an adjustment is it from what you were doing over the last couple of years? Hopefully it's a big one, right? Like, they've sucked at this. So, hopefully it looks completely different from what it has.
Yeah. You said you're not worried. This is special teams, man. Until proven otherwise, I think people should be worried about special teams. Yeah. You got Coach Eck now, and he's going to fix it all. But he's biting off a lot here in the first offseason instead of just saying, well, I've done it this way as a coach, because he has done it the Jack McCallister punting way as a coach before. Like, he's 2 years into this rugby thing. And he's like, no, we want to do it now. Like, there's no time to wait. Like, we want to be the best team right now. So this is another example of Nebraska not messing around, I suppose, of the Matt Rhule Nebraska just saying whatever it takes. Like, we're not gonna wait because there's something we could fix, but we don't need to fix it. No, like they're going all in on 2025 and putting their best foot forward in every way.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they'll have this punter to be determined at some point soon. He'll be around in the month of June when there's some limited work that the coaches can do with the team. They'll have camps and things like that. And then all of training camp in August. So I would expect that it's going to be fine. But here we go again with like Matt Rhule and his move to give more autonomy to the coordinators. And we've talked about this since November, when Dana Holgorsen came in and got the green light to run the offense the way he wanted to run it. And this carries over to Mike Ekeler.
Absolutely. And it works as long as you find the right guys to do it. And they're super passionate about exactly what, and I think they have, right? Dana Holgorsen loves offense. That's his thing. He's not a head coach anymore, in part because he just wants to do this. And Mike Ekeler has found his niche doing this. I was at the Jet Awards banquet. Shout out to Michael Severe, daily listener of this podcast. And Ekeler he was there. He wasn't supposed to talk. He wasn't in the run of show, but someone pulled him up and was like, "Hey, why don't you say a couple things?" And he just ripped off a bunch of stats about special teams. And it's a special teams award, right? Caden Weechin,
sure,
from Iowa, won the award. And he just, started talking about all the things that they, had done and believed in at Tennessee and how good they were at those things. And he also mentioned that he was living basically out of a suitcase because he was wearing a polo. That dude lives it and breathes special teams every day. He has dedicated his football life to this. So I think Rhule found the right guy to turn that over to. That's my takeaway.
Has he not unpacked since he got here in
no, he
2 months ago?
Polo. He's like, yeah, they told me business casual, so I threw on a polo. But this is what I got right now. I'm living out of a suitcase.
Really? That's even beyond. I think he's in some kind of a competition with Holgorsen, who hasn't brought a car to Lincoln yet. Eckler's like, I got you there, bud. I haven't unpacked my suitcase yet. So
check it out.
All right.
Yeah, still working on my tiny travel tube of toothpaste.
We can keep talking about Mike Ekeler and the punter and special teams and everything that Matt Rhule might have to address on Thursday today when he goes in front of the podium after Nebraska's 12th practice of the spring. But first, let's take a break. We'll come back and continue this discussion. A message for you right now from Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. And with Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need hands for a project, extra hands, or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com. Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today.
All right, welcome back. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you here on a Thursday. One potential final reminder here to get your questions in for the mailbag. The mailbag show coming up tomorrow. It is indeed the end of the week. All right. Speaking of that, Matt Rhule is going to be speaking after practice today on Thursday. It'll be Nebraska's 12th practice. Remember, they only get 15 of these. And I would imagine, as we are now smack dab in the middle of the portal. Well, I guess we're not in the middle of it yet, but we're on the front end of the portal window. I imagine there will be some of that conversation going on. Nebraska lost a few, I guess, to the portal yesterday. And we could talk about those news items as well. But there's plenty more to discuss from a football perspective with Rhule as well.
Yeah, I'm curious though what else Ekeler had to say at the Jet banquet. Anything else? I mean, you got the suitcase comment.
He was not up there for very long. He was like, "Hey, I didn't know I was going to be talking tonight." I'm going to blame Damon Benning on this one, who was probably, because Michael runs a really tight ship. And I imagine Damon probably just went up to him and said, "Hey, why don't you say a couple things, Ek, like just getting in there." So until further notice, I'm blaming Damon Benning on that one. But he gets up there. He's not up there for very long. Probably 2-3 minutes tops. But yeah, he ripped off like specific stats. And he didn't hem and haw about it. It was specific stats about the things that they did at the return game and the things that they allowed in the return game, stuff that we've heard before, but he didn't have any notes with him or anything like that. So he was short but sweet but impactful at the Jet Awards.
It's like with Rhule, the first year that he went to the Outland banquet, and he was like, "I hope to be back here very soon with one of my guys." Mm-hmm. And I'm sure Mike Ekeler, was feeling the same kind of stuff.
He had that. Yeah. He because it made it more fun because an Iowa guy won the award. So he's like, "Yeah, we're going to make that a Nebraska guy," or something like that. By the way, while we're on the subject, Caden Weechin, the guy who won the award, the returner from Iowa, and it's a tough spot for him because he is in a room with hundreds, if not thousands, of Nebraska football fans, basically people from Omaha and Lincoln and all across the state. And, he played junior college ball at Iowa Western. So he did a really good job of being like, go Hawks. And then he's like, "Whoa, this is quite the warm welcome for an Iowa guy." Like, he made a good joke about it and stuff like that. So there's always some shots across the river whenever Nebraska and Iowa kind of get together.
Absolutely. And Iowa's had its share of visits to the Outland banquet too, with the offensive line history in Iowa City. So maybe in the days ahead, Nebraska can start to participate in those events by more than just having coaches appear and make impromptu speeches. So, all right, on Thursday today, as you said, Matt Rhule will address the media, portal talk, roster management talk for sure. We're still without a ruling on the 105-man roster situation. So some talk about that. I'm sure as spring comes to an end, there are naturally going to be conversations that are happening with Rhule and his players about the future, about what's going on over the next 4 months. And there's a lot of uncertainty there. I would like to hear from Rhule a little bit more about the defensive line depth, kind of following up with what John Butler had to say on Tuesday when he mentioned how Nebraska's back seven is coming together really well and in creating not just like a group that is set to start, but players behind the starters to be contributors as well. Like, where are they at in Rhule's estimation on the defensive front?
Yeah, I've heard this kind of crop up over the last couple of days. Is maybe this is a concern point. You do have a lot of unproven guys, and I just think people have to adjust their brains a little bit because they're just. I think Nebraska on the defensive line is going to be asked to do something completely different than what Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmaker were asked to do over the last couple of years, which is, play a billion plays and kind of hold guys up. And, Ty did everything. Ty was not only holding guys up on the defensive line and holding gaps, but he was also sneaking through and rushing the passer as well. Like, I think Nebraska's probably going back to a little bit more of a traditional setup here where they can have guys who are specifically built to do that, specifically built to rush the passer, and it's not coming from kind of funky directions. Like it'll come from, more traditional. But with that being said, you need bodies, and you're wondering who those bodies are. We talked about Riley Van Poppel a lot yesterday. Keona Davis has obviously gotten some run for kind of what he looks like. Elijah Judy's in that conversation. I think we mentioned on this podcast yesterday, Mitch, Cam Lenhart, how we haven't heard a lot about him. That's another guy in the defensive line. Haven't heard a lot about Jalen George. I think he was one of the injury guys. I think that popped up before camp as well. So like you want to hear that the progress is going well, but at the same time, I don't know. I wouldn't consider this a concern point for me quite yet.
Yeah, there's an opportunity for some of the guys too who've been in the program for a few years here this spring. Much like what we've heard on the offensive side with the second and third year players, Grant Bricks, Preston Taumua, Tyler Kanak has made a move on the offensive side. Defensively, it's not really different. If you want to look at like Dylan Parrott, Mason Goldman, there are some players there who should have had opportunities this spring and have been in the program long enough that they have had time to learn things. And yeah, that's kind of a topic that I would like to check in with Rhule on as we get into the final week. Really, just 2 practices left for the spring after today, because next Saturday is the Husker games. What else? Like, we're used to Rhule being up there for 20 minutes at these spring briefings, and we just heard from him on Saturday. It wasn't long ago, but it's an opportunity to talk to the head coach. So like, let's get creative here. What else do you want to know?
Yeah, I'm interested. I mean, Nebraska, and we could talk about one of the portal departures they had yesterday coming in the third segment, but they, over the last couple of weeks here, they've lost a couple wide receivers that maybe they thought had a chance to provide depth for them this year. And Hardly Gilmore, who got kicked off the team, and he's going back to Kentucky in the transfer portal. And then Alex Bullock left in the transfer portal, a guy who is really productive for Rhule in his first year here. So, by way of necessity, but I imagine he provided a steadiness, a steady hand in terms of leadership and stuff like that. And if you needed a guy to, go out there and throw a block, he was always going to be in the right position to do that, and a pretty good route runner as well. So like maybe wide receiver, depth, like kind of how's that going beyond Dane Key? I think that's probably a question that could come up today.
Yep. We'll see where it goes. Sometimes Matt Rhule comes into these press room interviews with some things on his mind that he wants to go into. I'd like also to ask him a little bit about next week and what that looks like, and juggling the amount of things that Nebraska has to juggle. The portal is going to close on Friday of next week. So as that gets closer, how does he spend his time making sure that he gets to talk to everyone that he needs to talk to? And then what are they going to do on Saturday? We don't really have a ton of detail about what next Saturday, the 26th, is going to look like. I mean, we know there's going to be a garage sale and facility tours and a volleyball match, but like, what's it going to look like on the football field for the fans who are out there and considering whether they should buy tickets to this thing? What are you actually going to see? 7-on-7, like how's that going to look? Is like somebody mentioned to me the other day, is Jay Foreman going to be trying to cover Ja'Cory Barney?
I don't think I don't think so. I don't think so. You rule that one out. But I'm wondering, and Rhule, Rhule's not going to say anything about this, but like I'm kind of wondering on the outside how the ticket sales are going for this. I can't imagine. I can't imagine that. That it's
where do you set the over under on a number for next Saturday
in the stadium during the 7-on-7 or whatever the heck they're going to do?
Yes.
I don't know, like 7,000.
Oh man, see, I just don't think that there's a Nebraska football event that can draw that few of people, especially when it's in place of the spring game. I mean, what you're giving up is a scrimmage that's not very much fun to watch. Right now, it's saying 72 degrees. I'm looking at an Omaha forecast, but it won't be much different. Chance of storms, but it's more than a week out, so they don't know. But I mean, it's possibly going to be a nice day. And I think if that's the case, and they just said, hey, we're going to sell tickets for $10 to come look at the outside of the stadium at the end of April, you could get more than 7,000 people to do that on a 72-degree spring day. So I'm going to say that like 20,000, like they'll get 20,000 there.
We'll see. Well,
I've been wrong on this kind of stuff before.
No, you're probably right to over. You're probably right. I don't know, but we'll see what that looks like. Okay. A couple more headlines, transfer portal, things that you need to be aware about when we return here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. But first, a word from our friends from the FanDuel Sportsbook, where the NBA playoffs, depending on if you believe that the play-in tournament is a part of the NBA playoffs, well, the NBA playoffs are actually here, if you think that. And FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. So you look at the slate, you can get in on the NBA as early as tomorrow night. We have Hawks and Heat. Hawks are 1-point favorites. We have Grizzlies and Mavericks. Grizzlies are 6.5-point favorites. That's the play-in tournament. And then the whole shebang really starts with a full slate on Saturday. So plenty of opportunities for you to get in on the action right now, whether it's player props, live in-game betting, same game parlays, you want to bet a future and a champion, it's all there for you. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
Welcome back. Final segment of this Thursday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer are here with you to discuss all that's going on in Lincoln and some other places too. We mentioned the transfer portal comings and goings for much of this show. The portal opened on Wednesday, so a lot happened at Nebraska. Of course, the big news was Jack McCallister, the punter, headed into the portal. Also, Alex Bullock, the former Nebraska receiver with 1 year of remaining eligibility. He has been gone from the program since December. Bullock walked on senior day and was ready to hang it up as a college football player, but has another year of eligibility and clearly wants to test this thing out. He caught 15 passes for 221 yards in 2023 and really emerged when Matt Rhule came in. I think a lot of players went to the new coaches and said, hey, that guy, Alex Bullock, like we've seen it in practice, he can really get it done. And he did in a lot of ways in the 2023 season. And then Nebraska last season with Dylan Raiola, of course, looked to push the ball downfield more. Ja'Cory Barney came in. And Bullock, while he still played a lot, was not a primary target, caught just one pass. And, he saw things kind of fizzling out with his opportunities to get the ball. I don't necessarily think that he needs to be limited to like FCS or Group of Five if Alex is going to find another spot. I see him like kind of in a similar light as I did Cade Warner a few years ago, who went to Kansas State and finished his career.
Yeah, I think any program would be happy to bring him in if they have space. As a guy who's obviously a fantastic locker room guy and all that stuff, just like Cade was, and a really good blocker. If you're gonna, you need edge blocking on the perimeter, and can catch a few balls and is pretty athletic as well. So yeah, I wonder what kind of opportunities are out there for him. But as we've discussed, Mitch, it's kind of a numbers game, and we'll see how that one goes. Elsewhere, Marty Brown, former Creighton Prep star, who
same as the Bullocks.
Great.
It's a Creighton Prep segment.
Yeah, I guess we're doing the prep segment here. He was a freshman at North Dakota State last season, where he won the Jerry Rice Award, which is given to the top freshman in the FCS last year. Ran for 1,100 yards, almost 1,200 yards last year. And like we said, he's from prep. He's from Omaha. And so he enters the portal, and people immediately try to connect dots from Fargo, North Dakota to Lincoln, Nebraska.
Nebraska could use a good running back if there's one that falls in their lap. I think it's premature to say that Marty Brown, or Char Mar Brown, as he is known at North Dakota. I think he's known as both, but he goes by Char Mar on the NDSU roster, and that's the way that we saw him referenced during the FCS playoffs. Yeah, I don't know. It's let's see what happens over the next couple of days. If Nebraska ends up getting a visit from him, then we kind of know what's cooking behind the scenes. But I don't know that's necessarily in the works.
Yeah,
Good back.
No doubt. I would imagine that he gets some pretty good opportunities coming out of the portal. So maybe one to keep a little bit of a closer eye on. Elsewhere, the Nico Iamaleava situation seems to have come to a undramatic ending. He ends up at UCLA, where it seems like he did not get the $4 million, by the way, that he requested, whether it's from Tennessee or others. He ended up on the wrong side of this deal, but he ended up back near his home at UCLA. Of course, UCLA is on Nebraska's schedule next year, where the game is currently scheduled for Saturday, November 8th, or might we see that turn into the Friday night Rose Bowl fiesta? That the Friday night game last year that Nebraska got put in with Illinois ended up being a really, really good deal for Fox, who wants to make something out of those Friday night games. UCLA is a perfect candidate to flex out to a Friday night game because you can't play them in the morning window. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised.
It continues to just kind of be there as a possibility and something that people are discussing and kind of in the social media and regular media areas. I think as we talked about a few days ago, there are some minor additional complications that come with playing a Friday night game at the Rose Bowl because the city of Pasadena or the Rose Bowl organizing committee has to sign off on it. But the more you think about that, like UCLA has some influence over that, and UCLA is a partner with Fox. And if Fox really wants to play a game on a Friday night, like it did last year, UCLA Iowa played on a Friday night in Pasadena, I think they'll find a way to do it. So if Nebraska UCLA turns out to be that, the game would then be on November 7th. Yeah, and we'll see. Like Nico's not official quite yet to UCLA, but it definitely looks to be trending in that direction.
One more. Fred Hoiberg filled the opening on his staff with Pat Monahan, who was a Wyoming assistant last year, where he's spent the last couple decades in coaching, mostly in the upper Midwest, whether it be at smaller schools, and then spent the 1 year at Wyoming. So there you go. Fred Hoiberg's basketball staff is now complete.
Okay. Anything else on basketball? How do you feel about Nebraska's transfer portal class?
I like what they've done. I really do. I think there's a bigger conversation to be had about like how they've approached it. How they approached it last year. You want to do your defensive thing and have kind of just one primary scorer. Like I think this is a team that's built to push pace and tempo a little bit and shoot the three wall, which I think fits Fred a little bit more. And yeah, they might give up a little bit on defense, but I like the weapons that they've put together, and I think it gives them a chance.
Definitely will be able to shoot it. They have some shooters now to complement Connor Essegian. All right. Thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez as your favorite collegiate players get ready for the next level. Get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.